Well, good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 279 of the Prancing Pony podcast, where Sean has begged leave to go to the Outgarrison, leaving this guy to wait on me and talk to me if War and Council leave me any leisure.
Fine, but do not ask me to sing.
Oh, I promise I won't.
Folks, pull up a bench in the common room and join us. I'm Matt, the Nerd of the Rings, and I'm here with the Man of the West, who doesn't even have songs fit for average halls and boring times, Alan Sisto.
I've got a playlist called Meh that could work for you. What do you think, Matt?
Perhaps it could.
Yeah, it's an okay playlist. It's not great.
Yeah.
Folks, join us as we hang out with Pippin on his first day on the new job in the first of our 5 episodes on the Siege of Gondor, the 4th chapter in The Return of the King.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. It's one of the longest chapters in the book, and there is a lot to unpack here.
Oh, wow. You're only here, but what is that? Less than a minute and a half. And there's a lot to unpack here. That's already one of the PPP isms. So I think you're a good
I'm trying
fit.
to fit in.
You certainly are. You certainly are.
Folks, some of you are hearing this show for the very first time. To you, we bid a warm welcome. Here at the Prancing Pony podcast, we are reading, talking, and often joking our way through Middle-earth a few pages at a time.
Now, we take a deep dive into the lore. We explore how the story itself came to be. We talk a lot about our favorite themes and a whole lot more.
But in a lighthearted and fun way, like friends chatting at the pub. And we're glad you've joined us.
I'm sure you'll be glad you joined as well. But before we get to tonight's chapter discussion, it's time for my old friend, the Lord of the Mark, Sean Marchese, to pay us a visit for fan favorite Philology Faire.
Is Eowyn here? Because I much desire to speak with her.
I bet you do.
I do. Well, thanks for having me back on, Alan. Always a pleasure to be back.
Always good to have you.
It is good to be here. Well, folks, in this episode, we see Denethor assign Pippin some tasks as a replacement for his esquire, who has requested reassignment. And who can blame him? I mean, if I worked for Denethor and reported directly to him, I would probably request reassignment pretty quickly.
Even to the front lines. Yeah, fine.
Totally.
Just put me on the front lines. Get me out of here. Yeah.
Right. I will be the first one going over the top. Fine.
Enough of those tomatoes. Just enough of those dang tomatoes.
I know. It's just so gross. I can't eat tomatoes or chicken at all anymore. I'm just completely turned off. I'm going vegan.
Yeah. Except for the tomatoes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. All right. So we wanted to dive into the word esquire a little bit, even though this isn't the first time we've seen the word esquire in the legend.
No. See, we have to be strategic about these philology fairs, as you know.
Yeah. We actually saw this word back in the Passage of the Grey Company a couple of times, actually. We saw it in reference to Pippin's pal Merry, who had been named Esquire of Rohan of the household of Meduseld by the Lord of the Mark, the real Lord of the Mark, that is.
Yeah.
And we also saw it in reference to an Esquire of Eomer. Going back further to Book 2, we saw an Esquire of Isildur named Oktar, who was named at the Council of Elrond. And of course, all the way back in season 2, we saw Esquire appended to Bilbo Baggins' name at the end of The Hobbit. The late Bilbo Baggins Esquire. Well, of course, he wasn't actually late. He was just
tardy. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, we can probably surmise that Bilbo's not an Esquire in the same way that Oktar or Pippin or Merry would be. So let's dive into this word and find out more about it.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Esquire is just a variation on the word squire, as in the attendant of a knight or a nobleman. Both words, esquire and squire, both come from Old French esquier, which is spelled almost exactly the same as esquire, just flip the R and the E at the end. But believe it or not, squire without an E is actually older in English than esquire with an E.
Wouldn't that just be squir?
Without the initial E, I mean.
Oh, okay.
I should say that again.
No, I like that. No, that's good.
Squire without the initial E is actually older in English than esquire.
Okay, darn.
Sorry.
Because I thought squir was a really interesting word.
Yeah. No, actually, squire, with no E at the beginning, appears in Middle English as early as 1290. Esquire doesn't appear until 1477, which is actually kind of getting to the end of the Middle English period and getting into the earliest phase of modern English.
Interesting.
It seems that even though the French, who gave us the word, they spelled it with an E at the beginning, English speakers didn't really say it or spell it that way until a whole lot later.
I'm sure there's a French joke in there somewhere.
Probably is. We just can't find it right now.
No. I'll let you go.
All right. Now, interestingly, the Latin word from which escia was derived didn't have an E at the beginning of it either. The Latin root of the word is scutarius, which means shield bearer, and that comes from scutum, which means shield. So a squire was originally literally somebody who carried a knight's shield, and of course there are other effects as well.
Mm-hmm.
But notice that there's no initial E in scutarius. It was the French who put the E there later on. That actually happened a lot with Latin words that started with an SC or an ST or an SP. According to the online etymology dictionary, the later Romans evidently found these words difficult or unpleasant to pronounce.
Huh.
And so what happens is that in some Romance languages like French and Spanish, words that had an SC or an ST or an SP at the beginning, the French or the Spanish would put an E at the beginning to make it easier to say.
That's interesting. So, I mean, I'm thinking of the word special, and sometimes you see it with an E at the beginning, especial.
Yeah.
Now, I know we use the word especially, but that's different.
Right.
It is interesting to see that they have to add that vowel ahead of time because it's that S followed by a hard consonant sound is easier to make if you start with a vowel.
Right. They don't like saying it. It's not easy to say that, it doesn't work in their phonology. You see that again, like it comes up in Spanish a lot,
Interesting.
You see where, and like you brought up especial, that is the normal word for special in Spanish. At least Duolingo tells me it is especial. So it happens a lot.
Fascinating. So scutarius became esquier, kind of dropping the pronunciation of all those consonants to the end because French. But then that became squire in English, and then eventually back to esquire.
That's right. Now, I haven't been able to determine whether the English dropping the E in squire was an intentional move back towards the Latin spelling, like people knew Latin and were like, oh, it didn't originally have an E at the beginning in Latin, so let's go back to something more like Latin. I don't know if that was intentional or if it was just a coincidence. I can't
or just an anti-French thing.
It could just be an anti-French thing. Yeah.
The few Anglo-Saxons still around, I'm not going to include that.
That's
E.
right. Yeah.
Now, of course, these days you don't have to carry somebody's shield or help them put on their armor or hand them their lances at a joust or even take an arrow in the chest for them. Message for you, sir. To be called esquire. I love that scene.
Particular idiom.
Yeah. Now, in the U.S., the title tends to be reserved for people who practice law. But in the UK, certainly in the early 20th century in the UK, when Tolkien wrote The Hobbit, it was a title that actually could be given as a courtesy to any man in a more formal setting. And of course, that's exactly how Tolkien used it in The Hobbit, in reference to Bilbo.
Yeah, that's an example of a concept called semantic broadening, in which basically the meaning of a word evolves over time to mean something more general or more inclusive than it once did. Used to be you had to travel around with a grouchy old knight who barked orders at you all day to be called esquire.
Okay.
Now all you have to do is go to law school or be male and live in the UK, I guess. I guess it's still not that inclusive, but I guess it's more inclusive.
Well, certainly, yeah, more than it used to be. Now, one more observation from Ring of Words on this. Back in the passage of the Grey Company, Merry was called another title by Theoden, just a few sentences before he's named Esquire of Rohan. And we've talked a little bit about this. The title is Sword Thane, which the authors of Ring of Words point out has a Germanic flavor much more appropriate to the context of Rohan than the Frenchified Esquire. Now, in the word Sword Thane, we see the Old English word Thane, meaning attendant or servant, combined with sword. So Merry, while serving as Theoden's attendant, is either his sword servant or his shield bearer.
Jeez, Theoden, just carry your own gear, man.
Well, he's an old man.
Well, that's true. Denethor, too, for that matter.
Yeah.
But, I mean, can't they just get like a bag of holding or something? There's got to be something like that. Some sort of elvish sack. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that. A bag of holding. Denethor can, I don't know, maybe reach in there and find some hope. So... Poor man needs
reach in there and find a better son.
So, man.
In his eyes, not in my eyes. In
poor
his eyes.
Faramir.
In
Too
his
soon.
eyes.
Too soon. Well, thank you for that, Sean. And thanks again for stopping by the common room once more.
Thank you, sir.
It's great to hear from Sean, and I'm glad he shed some more light on this other use of the word esquire.
Yeah.
For now, though, what do you say, Alan, we get started?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm super excited to get into this huge, eventful chapter. Alan, would you start us off?
I would be happy to, sir. Chapter 4, The Siege of Gondor. Pippin was roused by Gandalf. Candles were lit in their chamber, for only a dim twilight came through the windows. The air was heavy, as with approaching thunder. What is the time? Said Pippin, yawning. Past the second hour, said Gandalf. Time to get up and make yourself presentable. You are summoned to the Lord of the City to learn your new duties. And will he provide breakfast? No, I have provided it, all that you will get till noon. Food is now doled out by order. Pippin looked ruefully at the small loaf and, he thought, very inadequate pat of butter which was set out for him, beside a cup of thin milk. Why did you bring me here? He said. You know quite well, said Gandalf, to keep you out of mischief. And if you do not like being here, you can remember that you brought it on yourself. Pippin said no more. Before long, he was walking with Gandalf once more down the cold corridor to the door of the Tower Hall. There Denethor sat in a grey gloom, like an old patient spider, Pippin thought. He did not seem to have moved since the day before. He beckoned Gandalf to a seat, but Pippin was left for a while standing unheeded. Presently, the old man turned to him. Well, Master Peregrine, I hope that you used yesterday to your profit, and to your liking, though I fear that the board is better in this city than you could wish. Pippin had an uncomfortable feeling that most of what he had said or done was somehow known to the Lord of the City, and much was guessed of what he thought as well. He did not answer. What would you do in my service? I thought, sir, that you would tell me my duties. I will, when I learn what you are fit for, said Denethor. But that I shall learn soonest, maybe, if I keep you beside me. The esquire of my chamber has begged leave to go to the out-garrison, so you shall take his place for a while. You shall wait on me, bear errands, and talk to me, if war and counsel leave me any leisure. Can you sing? Yes, said Pippin. Well, yes, well enough for my own people, but we have no songs fit for great halls in evil times, Lord.
All right, Alan, so let's go back to the beginning of this section that you just read for us, and start breaking this down. So Gandalf wakes Pippin up, and they are in a dark room. Yeah. And it's just a dim twilight coming through the windows. The air feels heavy. There's candles lit. So we definitely get the sense that, you know, this is not how you would typically wake up.
No, I mean, it must feel like the middle of the night, right?
Right, yeah. And so, you know, at best, it feels very early to Pippin. You know, it probably feels very early to him. And so he asks Gandalf what the time is.
Right. And that's when Gandalf tells him, well, it's past the second hour. But we should probably linger on that, kind of explain that a little bit, what that means, first hour, second hour. You know, different cultures are going to have different answers for what the second hour means. But Tolkien would have been keeping medieval time, as it were, and that's where we'd start.
Yeah, and back then, people would get up at daybreak for the first hour, perhaps woken by the bells of a local church, signaling prime around 6 a.m., give or take.
Right. Obviously, depending on latitude and time of year, but the bells would then ring tierce around 9, sext at midday, vespers around 6, and so on. And that was really how you kept your time. There was no, you didn't have an Apple Watch.
Right.
You know, mechanical clocks were there might have been a water clock in the church that would have enabled them to keep time, that would have told the guy when to ring the bells, but that's about as much as you got. And so nothing was very precise. You wouldn't have an appointment at 9:45. You just plan on meeting around the fourth hour, and everybody was probably late a lot.
Yeah, and I know several people who still kind of meet like that, to be honest.
Yeah.
So when Gandalf is saying that it's past the second hour, it's likely just after 8 a.m.
Right. So dawn is around 6. The first hour starts at 7. And that schedule, if you will, would make the third hour 9, the sixth hour noon, and the 12th hour 6 p.m.
With time addressed, we get a hint of what day it is by the fact that even though it's well into the morning, like I alluded to earlier, there's no sunlight whatsoever. It's just that dim twilight.
Right. But that's because it is, in fact, March 10th, the dawnless day. And Pippin really should have been expecting this darkness. You know, look, in podcast time, this has been weeks and weeks ago. And it was a couple of chapters ago as we spent some time with the passing of the Grey Company and the muster of Rohan. But we did actually talk to Pippin about this at the end of the last chapter, right? Gandalf says to him, at the sunrise, I shall take you to the Lord Denethor again. And then he corrects himself and says, no, when the summons comes, not at sunrise. The darkness has begun. There will be no dawn.
It's a great line.
Yeah, it is. It's a really heck of a way to end the chapter.
Yeah.
Now, surprisingly, my notes show that we haven't done a Meanwhile Elsewhere in Middle-earth for March 10th. We've done a March 9th, we've done a March 12th, and a March 13th. I don't think we're going to get a chance to do a full-blown Middle-earth moment before this day goes by because it changes pretty quick. So, Matt, if you would just give us a brief review of the basics provided to us in The Tale of Years.
Absolutely. So it's the muster of Rohan as Theoden and his men ride from Harrowdale.
Mm-hmm.
Aragorn and his army, rangers, and the dead men cross the river Ringlow in southern Gondor. Sauron's northern army takes Caer Andros, as Faramir will explain next week.
Right.
While Frodo, Sam, and Gollum pass the crossroads and see the Witch King's army depart from Minas Morgul.
Right. So that's what's going on around Middle-earth. So Gandalf tells Pippin the news after he wakes him up. Denethor has summoned him for his new duties, and with typical Hobbit interest, Pippin asks if breakfast is included in his new role.
Yeah, and we'll see that this is not the last time Pippin is concerned with food in this very chapter.
or ever. Yeah.
Or ever, yes. Gandalf, he has some unpleasant news. He's brought breakfast. It's all you're going to get till noon. No second breakfast for you, Pippin.
What about second breakfast? I don't think he gives a darn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, we find out all meals are given out by order. So plan on eating sparingly. And I love this because it goes so well setting up that they are preparing for a siege.
Exactly. And, anytime you're dealing with a siege, you've got to be aware of hunger and your food supplies. I mean, hunger is always the most powerful ally of any besieging army. So, yeah, time to start cutting back.
None too pleased with the breakfast of a small loaf of bread with very little butter and some milk, Pippin asks Gandalf a question that just maybe he should have already asked. Why did you bring me here?
Maybe you should have asked that before the third day on Shadowfax on your way over, but yeah. Gandalf's answer is real simple, real straightforward, is to keep you out of trouble. And then, interestingly, of course, he reminds Pippin that it was his own fault that he got into this. And, of course, it is, right? I mean, Pippin's the one who looked into the Palantir after their encounter with Saruman at Isengard and the arrival of the Nazgul, which connected or not. I mean, obviously, he didn't. The Nazgul that had arrived at that point was not related to Pippin looking into the stone. They're fast, but they're not that fast. But that triggers Gandalf's need. Yeah.
They predict that will bring yet another at some point.
Certainly. Yeah.
So Pippin then heads over to the Tower Hall with Gandalf and walks in.
Right.
He sees Denethor and in his mind compares him to an old patient spider.
That's an interesting analogy, isn't it?
It is.
What do you think he means by this?
I picture like a fly caught in a spider's web,
Yeah.
Obviously, we're going to get the more literal event with Sam, Sam and Frodo meeting Shelob. But yeah, I just get the sense that he knows that he's outmatched with Denethor in every possible way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we saw when he kind of played that rhetorical game with him in Minas Tirith, right? When Pippin upped his rhetoric to match this, high level, and he spoke in ways that you don't hear him speak to the other hobbits.
Right. Yeah.
That he's able to sort of match that, but I think he knows certainly this guy's well and truly like Gandalf. There's no way that I'm going to be able to hold my own.
Exactly.
In fact, there are many times that he feels like Gandalf and Denethor are almost peers. In the sense of equal power, at least. Yeah, old patient spider. It's an interesting one. Is there a visual element to that? I mean, unless he's sitting there with his arms up on his chair, looking like he's... The only thing I can think of is there is the addition of the fact that he didn't appear to have even moved since the night before.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And maybe there's something to that. The idea that this is a guy who plans his moves very strategically, very methodically.
Yeah.
And anything I do, he's already thinking 3 or 4 moves ahead. It's the only thing I can think of. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what you just said made me think of the fact that, later in the book, we're going to discover that Denethor is a person who sleeps with his chainmail on. Like he wears chainmail day and night. And I just feel like he is just in this constant state. He lives this 24/7. Yeah. Interesting.
I like this. In either case, it's, no matter what it means, this passage is another example of us being placed in the shoes of the character in the story who's the least knowledgeable, right? We see this all the time. We're so often given Sam's perspective, Pippin's perspective, Gimli's perspective with the Paths of the Dead. It's very rare that we're put into, say, Gandalf's shoes or Aragorn's shoes. And I like it here. It gives us a sense of maybe being overwhelmed by, the significance of what's going on.
Yeah. It's a very effective literary technique that Tolkien uses and makes us relate to the characters and put ourselves in their shoes, because we are the outsiders and we are the less knowledgeable ourselves.
No doubt about that.
And so while Denethor invites Gandalf to grab a seat, he ignores Pippin for a bit.
Yeah.
And then Denethor finally turns to Pippin and begins to speak to him.
That's right. And of course, his first thing is to comment or question. I don't know. I can't tell if it's a rhetorical question or not, but certainly Pippin doesn't go to answer it, about how Pippin used his time the day before, which of course we know was spent with Beregond and Birgil. But then he comments on the sad state of affairs in the food department, right? There are no Michelin-starred restaurants in Minas Tirith at this time, and the whole town is just getting shredded on Yelp, right? I mean, dark, gloomy, and everybody's depressed. Nice views, no place for my kids to play. I mean,
There's
Minas
no
Tirith,
inns, nothing.
yeah, no hotels, no Airbnbs. I don't even know where to stay. This place is a disaster. Don't come here.
Yeah, and Pippin, like you said, doesn't respond right away. He has a hunch that's probably correct, that Denethor knows everything he did or said yesterday.
Now does he? I have to admit, I don't know, but could he? Well, I mean, certainly he could, right?
Yeah, I mean, I doubt that Beregond was called in for a briefing, though.
I don't know.
He
Maybe
probably was. Yeah,
yeah,
maybe he was.
I want to know everything that Pippin said to you. Yeah.
I hope that Beregond's memory is really good in that case.
Yeah, poor Beregond.
And of course, the other reason he could know is the Palantir, though he was probably using that for more important things.
Yeah, I imagine that he was. I mean, he's preparing for a war, but he's probably figuring out how far Aragorn might be from Minas Tirith, or maybe where his Amazon order is. I don't know. But yeah, I doubt he's using the Palantir to check in on Pippin's actions the day before.
So Denethor changes tack and asks a direct question instead.
Yeah.
What would you do for me?
What could Pip do for me?
Yeah, right? And Pippin, rather honestly and quite wisely, defers.
Yeah, I don't want to answer that question. What would I do for you? I mean, keep in mind, Pippin offered Denethor his service in honor of Boromir. It's not as though he had a particular idea or role in mind. Well, I can make you breakfast, or I don't know, I'd offer, well, I can deliver a message to the Shire for you. Yeah, no, but see, the thing is, Denethor didn't pre-screen this employee, and HR hasn't administered a Myers-Briggs personality test, so Denethor has no clue what this guy's good at. He has to find out for himself just what Pippin can do.
Yeah, I doubt that, Gandalf gave him a reference.
Probably not. No.
So Denethor decides he'll keep him by his side for a bit.
Yeah, that's the best way to find out, right?
Yeah. And he replaces the esquire of his chamber, which you and Sean talked about in the Philology Faire this week, who wanted to go to the out garrison.
And folks, just a quick thing, an out garrison is exactly what it sounds like. It's a garrison that's out there. It's a defensive force some distance away from the main point of defense, a fortress, keep, castle, city, that kind of thing.
And I have to be honest, if Denethor was making me sing while he violently ate tomatoes and chicken, I'd probably want to go to the out garrison too.
That's a good point. I'd rather get shot up by orcs than have to keep on watching that. Yeah. So Pippin's job is basically to wait on Denethor, run errands. I guess he's going to make his Target run or something, place an Amazon order, and talk to him if Denethor has any free time. But, oh, by the way, no pressure. Can you sing?
Well, sure, Pippin says, but not for places or times like this.
Right.
Hobbits, they usually sing about food and drink, bad weather, baths, etc.
Baths. Oh, hey, for the bath at the end of day. Absolutely. Now, in the bit that we didn't read, Denethor makes, I think, a really decent point here, right? Hearing about these places that enjoy songs like that would make our sacrifice in these times more enjoyable.
Yeah, it helps me know our efforts were worth it, even if we weren't thanked. Great snark, Denethor.
Yeah, he's always going to try to get that in there. You ungrateful little, I mean, you can kind of hear Boromir there too, right? He was same way. Right? We do all this work
absolutely.
and nobody even cares that we make these sacrifices. But yeah.
Like father, like son.
All right, folks. So we'll come right back to the text after a quick break. Now, before we get back to the text and the mystery of Pippin's singing skills, we want to make sure you know that even after you've listened to this episode, there is a lot more talk going on at the Prancing Pony Podcast.
The PPP has an amazing listener community. They're always coming up with great questions and discussions across all our social media spaces. Check out our common room on Facebook, our dedicated subreddit, Twitter, and more.
Now, on Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast. Follow the page to get our news and episode releases, but be sure to join the group for some great discussions.
Or if you prefer Reddit, find us there at r/prancingponypod. On Twitter and Instagram, we're simply at prancingponypod.
And please be sure to check out the Rings of Power Wrap-Up. Now, that's my new podcast with Sarah Brown and my most recent co-host here on the PPP, James Tauber, where we discuss, analyze, and speculate all about Amazon's television adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth.
Alan, Sarah, and James take deep dives into the lore behind the show, or the lore that should be behind the show, talk about themes and characters, and interview folks involved with the show. So look for the Rings of Power Wrap-Up and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And check at Rings Wrap-Up on social media for more.
All right, Matt, I know we've talked about some of the projects that I've got going on here at the PPP, but I don't think that you and I have talked about this next one yet.
Don't tell me I know what it is. You are starting a YouTube channel.
No, I'm going to leave that to the professionals. Well, and you. No, Sean and I are writing a book. Now, it's called Why We Love Middle-earth, and it's going to be releasing this September, just in time for Hobbit Day and the start of Season 8 of the PPP. We are really excited.
Yeah, I'm really pumped about it, too. I think it's really cool that you get your own special edition of the book with the 40-point font so you don't have to use your readers.
Wow. Brutal, sir. Man.
But in all seriousness, Alan, I'm really looking forward to the book. Why don't you tell us a bit about this book that you've written?
Well, here's the thing, Matt. With last year's release of the Amazon show last year, it feels like it was just a few weeks ago, but technically it was in 2022. With that and the other ways the fandom is growing, Sean and I both believe that a brand new group of viewers and fans are going to be looking to learn more about the rich world of Middle-earth and the Middle-earth fandom. So Why We Love Middle-earth is going to be a guidebook for them, for those diving into Middle-earth for the first time, as well as for legendarium veterans looking for more information on a specific aspect of Tolkien's works and or Tolkien's fandom. Now, the book is going to be a collection of short chapters, each serving as an introduction to one of the different books, to a topic of study or a fan interest. And the idea is really to just draw readers deeper into Middle-earth as they read along with us.
Yeah, and you've been kind enough to let me preview the first chapter and the table of contents. Honestly, it's looking like it's going to be a really great read.
I hope so.
Yeah.
That's the hopes, yeah.
And, you guys are going to be talking about the legendarium, of course, but I love that you guys are also tackling things like adaptations, art, games, online communities, fan gatherings, languages, and just even more great aspects of this fandom.
That is the hope. Yeah. No, we are going to be talking about those things. And really the fun part about this is that the book is going to mirror the experience of listening to the podcast as much as we can do in a book. There are going to be a lot of asides, a lot of digressions, commentary in each of our two individual voices, and plenty of, pop culture references and bad dad jokes. Now, pre-orders are already available, so check out our socials and our website for more info. For now, though, let's go ahead and get back to the story. Matt, if you would pick up shortly after Denethor's little thankless snark.
Pippin's heart sank. He did not relish the idea of singing any song of the Shire to the Lord of Minas Tirith, certainly not the comic ones that he knew best. They were too, rustic for such an occasion. He was, however, spared the ordeal for the present. He was not commanded to sing. Denethor turned to Gandalf, asking questions about the Rohirrim and their policies, and the position of Éomer, the king's nephew. Pippin marveled at the amount that the Lord seemed to know about a people that lived far away. though it must, he thought, be many years since Denethor himself had ridden abroad. Presently Denethor waved to Pippin and dismissed him again for a while. "Go to the armories of the citadel," he said, "and get you there the livery and gear of the tower. It will be ready. It was commanded yesterday. Return when you are clad." It was as he said, and Pippin soon found himself arrayed in strange garments, all of black and silver. He had a small hauberk, its rings forged of steel maybe, yet black as jet, and a high-crowned helm with small raven wings on either side, set with a silver star in the center of the circlet. Above the mail was a short surcoat of black, but broidered on the breast in silver with the token of the tree. His old clothes were folded and put away, but he was permitted to keep the gray cloak of Lorien, though not to wear it when on duty. He looked now, had he known it, verily Ernil Iferianath, the prince of the halflings, that folk had called him. But he felt uncomfortable, and the gloom began to weigh on his spirits.
Wow. And then we'll skip the next paragraph. So let's go back to the beginning of that section, right? Pippin feels super uncomfortable about singing his silly Shire tunes for Denethor. This is like you ask for Luciano Pavarotti and you get Weird Al Yankovic. You know, I mean, it's like, yeah, maybe this isn't exactly the right thing for me to sing. But he does dodge a bullet when Denethor decides to have that little policy chat with Gandalf.
And we listen in from Pippin's perspective as Denethor asks Gandalf about the Rohirrim, and specifically asking not about Theoden's position, but that of Éomer, which is interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah. I'm wondering, is this maybe because Denethor had previously, using the Palantir, observed Theoden's decline under the influence of Saruman and Wormtongue? Here's the thing that we sometimes forget because these books are so long and so many things happen. It's only been 8 days since Theoden's healing. So yeah, maybe the last time he checked in on Theoden with the Palantir, Theoden was still this old man and not really in charge of anything. And therefore it would be Éomer's opinion who would be, that would be more important. It's interesting.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because especially, out of all the Lord of the Rings, there's so many years and months that go by in the front half. And then, we get to these later books and time really slows down where it's only
really does.
A course of a matter of days.
And so much overlapping and interweaving. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. And as is often the case with the epistemic regime that Tolkien uses, putting us in the shoes of the least knowledgeable, we see that Pippin is surprised to discover that Denethor knows so much, given both the distance to Rohan and the apparent lack of travel due to Denethor's age.
Are you making another old man joke? I travel a lot, man. I don't know what you're talking about. No. It is interesting, though. You're right. I mean, it's Pippin's like, well, how would you know? I mean, when was the last time you've been to Rohan? But when Denethor speaks to Pippin again, it has nothing to do with Rohan, but it also, thankfully, doesn't have anything to do with asking him to sing.
Yeah, it's to tell him to go to the armory and get his uniform and equipment.
That's right. It's going to be ready for you. I put the order in yesterday. Amazon promised next day delivery. It should be there. 100%.
And he tells him to come back when you're dressed for service. And I have to say, the unsung hero of this story is the person who pulled an all-nighter to make Pippin's garments. Because I can't imagine they had
a hauberk and extra small. Not in that size, no.
Exactly. Yeah. And not surprisingly, it goes just like Denethor said. All Pippin's new gear is ready. And we see his uniform is silver and black.
Sorry, you're not a Raiders fan. You probably don't recognize the autumn wind when you hear it. Yes, the autumn wind is a pirate blustering in from sea with a rollicking song. No, I'll save our listeners from having to listen to me recite the entirety of the autumn wind. But the silver and black thing definitely got me going. I couldn't help it. So Pippin, besides looking like an Oakland Raiders fan, and I'll always call them that, he gets a chainmail shirt, but instead of it being shiny mail, it's solid black, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
His helmet has a high crown with wings and a silver star in the middle. And on the top of that mail, he's wearing a black surcoat. Now, a surcoat, folks, that is a sleeveless garment worn over armor. So typically it would be for this exact purpose, to put some sort of emblem on, right? To maybe a color or an emblem to identify, who you're fighting with. And in this case, that's exactly what it does, right? It's got that silver embroidered tree on it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, but I just thought of this. I'm pretty sure that, I don't know if Pippin specifically, but I know some of the guards of the tower, their helmets actually contain some mithril.
Mithril, correct. That is correct. I wouldn't be surprised if, some of his helmet is, if his helmet has some mithril, or maybe there's mithril in the embroidery. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, we know, for instance, that Aragorn, the standard that he will reveal when he eventually shows up again, that's mithril.
Yeah,
in
has
the
mithril
black.
and gold in it. Yeah.
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
And while Pippin can keep his cloak from Lorien, he cannot wear it while he's on duty.
Well, yeah, it hides the uniform. But yeah, he really does look like the prince of the halflings now, right? The Ernil I Feriannath. Just a lovely turn of phrase there. I love it.
Yeah, and can you imagine, everyone there thinking that he's Prince of the Halflings, and Pippin is like now their measuring stick for all halflings. Like,
seriously,
this is what halfling royalty is like.
Oh man, I better act like royalty now.
And yet he was more than just uncomfortable. The darkness weighs on him.
Yeah, the gloom began to weigh on his spirits.
Yeah. So in the part of the text that we skipped, we see that the darkness lasts all day.
Yeah.
The text tells us that from the sunless dawn until the end of the day, the shadow just got deeper and deeper, weighing not just on Pippin, but on all the people of Minas Tirith.
Right. Now, kind of referencing that darkness, that shadow, let's go back to the last chapter and Merry facing the same darkness. Merry saw many folks standing, looking up and muttering. All their faces were gray and sad, and some were afraid. With a sinking heart, he made his way to the king. It's very much the same tone, this whole
absolutely
just overwhelming darkness. Yeah.
And we see at the end of this passage a cloud making its way out from Mordor to the west. And the language Tolkien uses here certainly explains the despair. This cloud is devouring light and is carried on a wind of war.
Devouring light. I mean, I got to tell you, when I read that, I cannot help but think of Ungoliant, who literally devoured light. Yeah. I mean, clearly this isn't that. Sauron isn't turning the light into unlight as she did. He doesn't have that kind of power, but it certainly does give one that same sensation.
And again, with the language of waiting, which we saw often in the last chapter.
Yeah. I mean, the Vale of Anduin waiting for the onset of the ruinous storm. This is a lot of, Pippin talking about the worst part of this is being on the edge of something and having to wait for it. Yeah.
All right, Alan, so why don't you go ahead and pick up where we left off?
I think I will. About the 11th hour, released at last for a while from service, Pippin came out and went in search of food and drink to cheer his heavy heart and make his task of waiting more supportable. In the messes, he met Beregond again, who had just come from an errand over the Pelennor out to the guard towers upon the causeway. Together they strolled out to the walls, for Pippin felt imprisoned indoors and stifled even in the lofty citadel. Now they sat side by side again in the embrasure looking eastward, where they had eaten and talked the day before. It was the sunset hour, but the great pall had now stretched far into the west, and only as it sank at last into the sea did the sun escape to send out a brief farewell gleam before the night, even as Frodo saw it at the crossroads, touching the head of the fallen king. But to the fields of the Pelennor, under the shadow of Mindalluin, there came no gleam. They were brown and drear. Already it seemed years to Pippin since he had sat there before, in some half-forgotten time when he had still been a hobbit, a light-hearted wanderer, touched little by the perils he had passed through. Now he was one small soldier, in a city preparing for a great assault, clad in the proud but somber manner of the Tower of Guard. In some other time and place, Pippin might have been pleased with his new array, but he knew now that he was taking part in no play. He was in deadly earnest the servant of a grim master in the greatest peril. The hauberk was burdensome, and the helm weighed upon his head. His cloak he had cast aside upon the seat. He turned his tired gaze away from the darkling fields below and yawned. And then he sighed. "You are weary of this day," said Beregond. "Yes," said Pippin, "very. Tired out with idleness and waiting. I've kicked my heels at the door of my master's chamber for many slow hours, while he has debated with Gandalf and the prince and other great persons. And I'm not used, Master Beregond, to waiting hungry on others while they eat. It is a sore trial for a hobbit, that. No doubt you will think I should feel the honor more deeply. What is the good of such honor? Indeed, what is the good even of food and drink under this creeping shadow? What does it mean? The very air seems thick and brown. Do you often have such glooms when the wind is in the east?" "Nay," said Beregond, "this is no weather of the world. This is some device of his malice, some broil of fume from the mountain of fire that he sends to darken hearts and counsel. And so it doth indeed. I wish the Lord Faramir would return. He would not be dismayed. But now, who knows if he will ever come back across the river out of the darkness." And we'll wrap that up there.
About the 11th hour. So going back to our sidebar earlier, this would be around 5 p.m.
Right. So it's, dinner time. We don't know if he had a lunch when he was at Denethor's side. He certainly seems to be implying that he didn't. But he does finally get a break, and so he goes looking for food and drink. I like what it says, though. It's not just for sustenance, right? It's not, Pippin was hungry, so he went looking for food and drink. He's going for food and drink specifically to cheer his heavy heart and to make it easier to keep waiting. I love it.
Yeah, it kind of gives us the sense that for hobbits, much like for us, eating can be a social thing too.
Yeah. And a comfort, right? I mean, even when we're by ourselves, sometimes, a grilled cheese sandwich, is a comfort on a hard day, and
he's facing the hardest of days right now.
He's facing something a lot harder than any of us are facing. That's for sure. But it repeats this notion of a heavy heart, doesn't it? I mean, it's once again, this is why he needs to eat, is to cheer his heavy heart. And man, the despair that's coming just with the darkness. And we're not even at the part that's really despairing yet, are we?
Right. Yeah. And it's amazing. Like Tolkien does this amazing thing. Like there is so much buildup to this siege that is coming.
Yeah.
And there's so much emphasis that he puts on how this makes people feel and the effect, and all the build up to it is just masterfully done.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Masterfully done is the phrase that came to mind. So very much thinking alike. Yeah. He does a phenomenal job of building that tension for us as readers through the emotions of the people there. Yeah.
And if food brings hobbits comfort, certainly the company of friends does as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's pleased to run into Beregond once again.
Oh, of course. Probably better than Burgil.
Yeah, exactly.
That kid threatened to take my lunch money, man.
Right, yeah. So they leave the messes and walk out to the walls where Pippin felt more at ease. And they sit once again where they sat and talked just yesterday.
Yeah. Now, of course, it's around sunset now. We're approaching 6 p.m., but there is no sun, in fact, to be seen. And then we're given another one of these really awesome moments that Tolkien does give us from time to time, where he connects the timelines. He lets us know exactly where somebody else is at this moment.
Yeah, we're reminded of that beautiful moment when the last rays of the setting sun touch the head of the statue of the king at the crossroads.
And of course, that also reminds us as the readers of Frodo and Sam, right? The importance of holding fast against the forces of Mordor for their sake. Very important. And man, what a moment. So even though it's been just a day, I love how we get this idea that it feels like a very long time, years, right? It feels like an eternity since he sat there just yesterday. And I love the comparison. What is it? It's not yesterday when we were at peace, or yesterday when Gandalf wasn't mad at me. It's yesterday when I was still a hobbit.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's heavy.
Yeah, it
because
is.
Now he's a soldier.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's one of many in a city preparing for this big coming battle.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a mention of the uniform again. Proud but somber.
Yeah.
And he also goes on to say, how under other circumstances, Pippin would be proud. He'd be very pleased with himself about being all dressed up. But here he knows full well he's not pretending or playing. This is deadly serious.
Yes, it is. And, as a result of that, the chainmail doesn't feel like it's so much of a protection. It feels more like it's a burden, right?
Yeah.
And he feels the weight of the helmet on his head. Maybe that's not the mithril model, right? Because we know it'd be lightweight.
Right.
Yeah. But then, he looks away from the Pelennor at this point, which is growing darker by the moment, and he yawns. He's just really, really tired. And what's interesting about this is this entire time that this passage has been happening, he's been with Beregond for 4 paragraphs since he ran into him in the messes. This is the first moment we get where the two of them actually speak.
Yeah, and Beregond asks him if he's tired of this day, and the answer is very much definitely yes.
Yeah, strong yes.
Yes, but it's not with fatigue from hard work or anything like that. It's tired out with idleness and waiting. So you
all
get
day long.
Yeah, you get that sense of how much this is wearing on him.
And I imagine that it would. I mean, I'm trying to think back to some of the jobs I've had. If it was busy, it was much better than slow.
It's almost easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Because when it's slow and you don't see anybody all day long, it feels like the longest eternity. Yeah, it really does. Yeah. So Denethor during that time, of course, is not talking with Pippin and asking him to sing for him. He's talking policy with Gandalf and the prince. Now, for those of you keeping score at home, that would be the Prince of Dol Amroth, along with some other unnamed high-ranking folk, generals, commanders, captains, something, lords, somebody. But coming back to a very hobbity aspect of this, Pippin points out to Beregond that's what's hardest for him is waiting on everybody else while they eat. This is so not hobbity.
Yes.
I'm dying here of hunger and you're eating in front of me and I just have to stand here. This is terrible.
I love how dramatic he is about this.
He really is.
It reminds me of like my kids in the car on a trip or something.
I'm going to die if I don't get food in the next 5 minutes. Yeah.
Or like, I love the moment of Gollum in Two Towers film where he says, "We must starve." It's so dramatic.
It's so junior high. It really is.
But then we see the conversation takes a dark turn.
Yeah, it does. Quickly.
Yeah. What's the good of honor? What's the good of food and drink?
Wow.
This shadow, this growing, expanding, ever dark shadow is a threat to Pippin.
Yeah. Yeah. And he wants to know what it means. He asks Beregond, hey, is this something Minas Tirith has very often? I mean, I can't help but read it. The very air seems thick and brown. I'm like, that's just LA in June. I mean, that's just smog, man. I mean, just get over it. It's just the way it is. But yeah, he asks Beregond, what's the deal here? And of course, Beregond does end up giving us a fairly clear explanation, or at least as clear as we're going to get about the darkness, doesn't he?
Right. Yeah. It's not the weather per se.
No.
It's something cooked up by Sauron somehow, some broil of fume from Mount Doom.
Yeah. And we talked about this way back when we first started seeing the darkness. Is this a magical darkness? No, the darkness is just an ordinary darkness coming from the volcanic cloud, but Sauron has caused that to happen. So there's some magic there somewhere, right? So yeah, a broil of fume from Mount Doom. And Beregond says that it's been sent for a purpose, doesn't he? It's been sent to darken hearts and counsel. And then he acknowledges it's been effective at those goals. And it does sure seem like that's been the case, both last chapter and this. But yeah, I do like this next bit, though. We get a mention of Faramir, and it's clear Beregond sees Faramir as somebody very, very special.
Yeah, he says, the shadow may darken hearts and counsel for some, but Faramir would not be dismayed.
He wouldn't.
He thinks very highly of Faramir.
He does.
Spoiler
he really
alert.
Does. Yeah. Yeah, he might, I don't know, he might do something pretty dramatic for Faramir's sake, I think.
Maybe.
Yeah, I wonder about this, right? Is this specifically Faramir? Would Boromir have been given the same credit? Is there anybody else in the city? I mean, would even Denethor be described this way? No, I don't think so. I feel like this is something that Beregond is specifically talking as unique to Faramir. But what do you think it is then about Faramir that would, well, it's kind of the wrong word, but would make him immune to this despair? Or maybe is this just Beregond possibly seeing more in Faramir than is really there? I mean, yeah, no doubt, Faramir is awesome. He's my favorite, absolute favorite character in The Lord of the Rings. I love him beyond words. His character in the books is out of this world, phenomenal.
Yeah.
But saying that he wouldn't have been darkened by this, is that giving him too much credit? And if not, what is it that would give him that ability?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for us as readers because we know that Faramir rejects the allure of the ring.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert for people who've only watched the movies.
Yeah, we've been down that road. Yeah.
Yeah, it's right away. He the biggest temptation for man in this book.
Yeah, laying by the side of the road, and I alone could save Minas Tirith. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if someone who had served under Faramir would have that kind of insight, like know his heart. And I've always seen Boromir is obviously the great warrior, you know, but we know that Faramir has this wisdom about him.
Mm-hmm. It's a good choice of word. I think wisdom. There's definitely a connection there also with Gandalf.
Yeah.
Not in a good way in Denethor's perspective, right? Wizard's pupil. But I think you're right. It's, if we also look at the way he speaks of the elves when he finds out where Frodo and Sam have been is different than what we hear from others. And I think he has maybe a respect for and even a little bit of a touch of fairy about him that might enable him to be a little stronger. I mean, we'll see later that he does succumb to the Black Breath,
Yeah.
But he's, I don't know, maybe more quick to heal than others might be.
Yeah. And I mean, that's probably a little different, the Black Breath, probably a little bit different than, this.
The general despair of the darkness of the clouds is a lower level,
But you bring up a good point. You mentioned Gandalf and, how there's some similarities there between Faramir and Gandalf. And we know Gandalf, part of his role in what's to come is that he kind of elevates the morale, so to speak, of those around him. And it kind of makes me wonder, like, maybe, that's part of Faramir's skill is that he is one of those morale boosting people.
Yeah. Sort of a mini Gandalf. Yeah.
Mini Gandalf. And we see that Beregond is concerned about whether Faramir will ever even come back.
Yeah. I mean, this is a pretty dangerous situation, and we know that he went all the way out there. Can he make it back? Now, in the part that we skipped, we see that's a concern that Pippin seems to share, or he at least relates the fact that Gandalf is sharing that same concern. In fact, Gandalf is described by Pippin here, interestingly, as both anxious and disappointed. And those are not descriptors we would normally apply to Gandalf. I mean, okay, maybe disappointed. He's often disappointed in Pippin, I suppose.
Right.
But have we ever heard of Gandalf being anxious about anything?
Yeah.
I don't know. He's always been pretty chill, but yeah.
You think of him as the Rock,
Right.
Yeah. But that prompts Pippin to wonder where Gandalf himself is.
Yeah.
Last Pippin saw him was before lunch. And I love that, we measure it by when the food was. Yeah,
exactly. The food I didn't get to eat, I might add.
Exactly.
Saying,
Yes. And we know that Gandalf left and he was not in a good mood.
No. And in fact, Pippin then just sort of wonders aloud, does Gandalf know something? Does he have some news? So in the middle of this conversation, something happens, and I'm going to have you pick up right there.
Suddenly, as they talked, they were stricken dumb, frozen as it were to listening stones. Pippin cowered down with his hands pressed to his ears. But Beregond, who had been looking out from the battlement as he spoke of Faramir, remained there, stiffened, staring out with starting eyes. Pippin knew the shuddering cry that he had heard. It was the same that he had heard long ago in the Marish of the Shire. But now it was grown in power and hatred, piercing the heart with a poisonous despair. At last Beregond spoke with an effort. "They have come," he said. "Take courage and look. There are fell things below." Reluctantly, Pippin climbed onto the seat and looked out over the wall. The The Pelennor lay dim beneath him, fading away to the scarce-guessed line of the great river. But now, wheeling swiftly across it, like shadows of untimely night, he saw in the middle airs below him 5 bird-like forms, horrible as carrion fowl, yet greater than eagles, cruel as death. Now they swooped near, venturing almost within bowshot of the walls. Now they circled away. "Black riders," muttered Pippin. "Black riders of the air. But see, Beregond," he cried. "They are looking for something, surely. See how they wheel and swoop, always down to that point over there. And can you see something moving on the ground? Dark little things. Yes, men on horses, 4 or 5. Ah, I cannot stand it. Gandalf! Gandalf, save us!" Another long screech rose and fell, and he threw himself back again from the wall, panting like a hunted animal. Faint and seemingly remote through that shuddering cry, he heard winding up from below the sound of a trumpet ending on a long high note. "Faramir! The Lord Faramir! It is his call!" cried Beregond. "Brave heart! But how can he win to the gate, if these foul hellhawks have other weapons than fear? But look, they hold on. They will make the gate. No! The horses are running mad. Look, the men are thrown. They are running on foot. No, one is still up, but he rides back to the others. That will be the captain. He can master both beasts and men. Ah, there one of the foul things is stooping on him. Help, help! Will no one go out to him? Faramir!"
All right, so let's go back to the beginning of that really powerful passage. And I thought you did a great job reading that. Without warning, both of them are frozen silent, but each, interestingly, in a different position, right? I mean, Beregond just frozen there, looking out from the battlement, his eyes sort of glazed over. Pippin, on the other hand, cowers and puts his hands over his ears. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're told that Pippin recognizes the sound immediately.
Oh, yeah.
It's the cry of the Black Riders. And so it makes me wonder if part of, Pippin's reaction and everyone else being frozen is Pippin knows what this is.
Yeah, he sure does, right.
And, with that, Tolkien takes us back for just a moment to the very first encounter in the Marish.
That's right. And then in doing that, though, he sort of brings us back forward to see how intense this is, right? See how much worse this is. It has grown in power and hatred.
Yeah.
And we get the mention of what I think is the true weapon of the Nazgul, a poisonous despair.
Yeah, so powerful. And we see Beregond speaks, even if it's taken most of his strength to do so.
Yeah.
And one of the first things he says is take courage, telling Pippin to come and look at what's happening below. Mm-hmm. And I like that he tries to find and give courage here.
I love that too, right? I mean, it's the first thing he says basically is take courage. Yeah. In a challenging situation like this. Now, he does say, to look below, right? Keep in mind, they are 700 feet above the plain here, looking out over the battlement. So below is quite accurate, including even these flying things. Pippin looks, and it's only when Pippin looks that we get to see what he sees, right? He sees the fields of the Pelennor. He sees them fading into shadow to a line that Pippin can only guess is the Anduin. He can't really see it. We know it's not that far. We know that it's actually only about 12 miles at its furthest, so it's definitely getting dark.
Yeah. And what he sees is terrifying.
Oh, yes.
5 bird-like forms, and let's talk about this a bit.
Yeah.
First, let's get a preview from the Battle of the Pelennor Fields so we can see them close up. If bird, then greater than all other birds, and it was naked, and neither quill nor feather did it bear. And its vast pinions were as webs of hide between horned fingers, and it stank. A creature of an older world, maybe it was, whose kind, lingering in forgotten mountains cold beneath the moon, outstayed their day. And in hideous eyrie bred this last untimely brood, apt to evil. And the Dark Lord took it, and nursed it with fell meats, until it grew beyond the measure of all other things that fly, and he gave it to his servant to be his steed.
Oh, fell meats. That must be what happens when you leave the steak out overnight on the kitchen counter. And you're like, oh, man, it's kind of a fell meat now. Should I still cook it?
Yeah, don't leave it out for the birds or you'll get fell beasts.
You'll get
around.
these nasty fell beasts. This thing, though, about a creature of an older world, when you combine that with the webs of hide between horned fingers, it really sounds primeval. It sounds ancient. Almost sounds like a dinosaur of some kind, right? Here's the thing. You wouldn't be the first to think that. Rona Bear wrote to Tolkien. Of course, if you look in the letters volume, you'll see a number of letters written to Rona. She asked several questions on behalf of a group of fellow enthusiasts. And one of those questions was, did the Witch King ride a pterodactyl at the Siege of Gondor? I love that.
Yeah.
Now, Letter 211 in Carpenter's collection gives his answer, and it's pretty interesting. Yes and no, Tolkien says. He says, I did not intend the steed of the Witch King to be what is now called a pterodactyl, and often is drawn with rather less shadowy evidence than lies behind many monsters of the new and fascinating semi-scientific mythology of the prehistoric. But obviously it is pterodactylic and owes much to the new mythology, and its description even provides a sort of way in which it could be a last survivor of older geological eras.
Now, setting aside Tolkien's clear skepticism about the study of prehistory, dinosaurs, and so on.
A little bit, huh?
Yeah, a little bit.
Tell us what you really mean, Professor.
That's right. We see an acknowledgement that it's not only like a pterodactyl, but that the way that he described it, it could be a last survivor of sorts from some earlier time. And I have to say, my kids are going to love the idea that there was dinosaurs in Middle-earth.
Dinosaurs in Middle-earth, man. I love it. I'm thinking next, the mouth of Sauron's going to come out on a T-Rex with his tiny little arms.
But, yeah. maybe Grond could be adapted as a mastodon or something.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Then once you bust down the gates, you bring in the Triceratops who just puts his head down and just spears everybody on the way.
Ooh, Triceratops would be a good one for Grond too, though.
Oh, I love it.
That's a good one.
I love it. We have just absolutely drawn in all the 8 to 10-year-old boys now, by the way.
Is that not the target market you're going for, Alan? I'm
totally
sorry.
The target market, right? My demographic has totally shifted now. All right. So back to the text. Pippin is watching these 5 pterodactyl-like creatures swooping around, circling away, each, of course, bearing a black rider. Now, he points out to Beregond that they're looking for something, and he's basing this on how they're wheeling around, huh?
Yeah, and then he spots men on horseback, just little specks at this distance, maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah, Legolas could pick out what they were wearing.
Yes, yes. He realizes the terrible danger these men are in and cries for Gandalf.
Yeah, I can't blame him. I mean, who else are you going to call under a situation like this, right? Yeah.
And I love that Beregond does like play-by-play for us here.
I know, it's very cool. And coming up on a 45-yard line, there is Faramir. Oh, no, he's still mounted on his... Wait, there's a flag on the play. Yeah, I mean, it does very much get that play-by-play feel, doesn't it? So we get this an additional Nazgul screech, and now Pippin's reaction is like, well, he's like a hunted animal, right? I mean, panic and fear.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming him, definitely.
Yeah, I love that description, by the way, of a hunted animal.
Yeah. Oh.
So vivid, and it's a perfect encapsulation of Pippin in that moment and what he would feel. But beneath that screech is another sound, the sound of a trumpet. And Beregond, of course, recognizes that call as belonging to Faramir.
That's right. But of course, now he's rightly worried that they aren't going to be able to possibly get back to the gate. I mean, there are 5 of these creatures. They are airborne. Mm-hmm. If they have any weapon beyond fear, and let's be honest, fear is bad enough, but if they happen to have like, a sword or something like that, these guys aren't going to make it back. Yeah, so we watch with him and we get that amazing play-by-play you talked about. And we're watching with Beregond now, I think, rather than Pippin, specifically because Beregond can explain more about Faramir, right? He can tell us these things like he's able to, command both man and beast, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's important because the horses are now throwing their riders. They're all running on foot except for him. Yeah.
And yeah, one of them is still mounted and returns to the ones on foot. And Beregond says that has to be Faramir.
Yeah.
And like you said, he has the ability to master both beasts and men. Obviously, again, Beregond thinks very highly of Faramir. If someone's charging back, it's Faramir. Like, it can't be anyone else.
No, it can't
It's got to be him.
But especially because he's mounted, right? The others have all been thrown,
Yeah.
and Faramir does have this amazing skill with animals. Yeah,
Right.
He's the Dr. Doolittle of Minas Tirith, right?
Yeah. And we see he calls for someone to go and help Faramir as one of the Nazgul stoops down. And Alan, you're going to lead us into the last reading of tonight.
That's right. With that, Beregond sprang away and ran off into the gloom. Ashamed of his terror, while Beregond of the guard thought first of the captain whom he loved, Pippin got up and peered out. At that moment, he caught a flash of white and silver coming from the north, like a small star down on the dusky fields. It moved with the speed of an arrow and grew as it came, converging swiftly with the flight of the 4 men towards the gate. It seemed to Pippin that a pale light was spread about it, and the heavy shadows gave way before it. And then, as it drew near, he thought that he heard, like an echo in the walls, a great voice calling. "Gandalf!" he cried. "Gandalf! He always turns up when things are darkest. Go on, White Rider! Gandalf! Gandalf!" he shouted wildly, like an onlooker at a great race, urging on a runner who is far beyond encouragement. But now the dark, swooping shadows were aware of the newcomer. One wheeled towards him, but it seemed to Pippin that he raised his hand, and from it a shaft of white light stabbed upwards. The Nazgul gave a long, wailing cry and swerved away. And with that, the 4 others wavered, and then, rising in swift spirals, they passed away eastward, vanishing into the lowering cloud above. And down on the Pelennor, it seemed for a while less dark. And we'll stop there this week.
Yeah. Now let's go back and break this down. So Pippin feels shame as Beregond runs off to find a way to rescue Faramir.
Yeah. But in fairness, Pippin shouldn't be too hard on himself. He doesn't know the city. Beregond does.
Pippin's liable to get lost if he starts running off in some direction. I mean... So he gets up and looks, seeing a bolt of silver and white coming down toward the riders.
Right, and it's moving fast. I mean, the speed of an arrow. This thing is flying. It's growing, and it's on a direct intercept course with the men that are heading towards the gate. And I love this. Pippin even sort of perceives that there's a light in front of it that dispels the shadows as it's going on. And then, of course, beyond that, he can hear a voice calling. And we're not given any words, but that's when he recognizes.
Yeah, he rightly recognizes this for who it is and cries out Gandalf's name.
Mm-hmm. Cheering him on like at a football match, or as Tolkien writes, like an onlooker at a great race. What do you get about this, though? Urging on a runner beyond encouragement. What does that mean? Maybe the runner is just out of the range of encouragement? I mean, I don't think Gandalf's not hearing him, that's for sure. Or like, I'm in the 26th mile of a marathon. I can't hear a thing.
Not that
I've ever done
far beyond encouragement. I think of, like you said, the 26th mile of the marathon, like this is as fast as I can go.
I've already given it all I've got, man. If I don't keel over.
But the Nazgul are aware of Gandalf's arrival now and take action, and they wheel towards him.
That's right. Bad idea, by the way.
Yes.
They don't realize, I don't think, but they're about to. And that's when Gandalf decides it's time to directly employ his magia, right? His magical skills now. He's using light as a weapon.
Yeah, and I love that Gandalf uses magic here, and it's something we don't see a ton of in Tolkien. We see a few examples, and it's that idea that, the Astari, they're kind of limited in the amount of magic that we see them use.
Yeah, that's true. They are not normally using their magia. They're using their persuasive skills, right? I mean, Gandalf, his whole job was to encourage people to take the fight to Sauron, not to take the fight to Sauron himself.
Yeah, so I love that we get that glimpse of Gandalf's true power here.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, this is also Gandalf 2.0, right? Gandalf the White.
That's right.
Having been sent back, not sent back by the Valar, but sent back by Ilúvatar himself, and empowered accordingly. So I think there's something there too.
That's right. And of course, this magic used by Gandalf causes the Nazgul to cry, waver, and turn away, heading back to Mordor.
Absolutely. Go back where you came from. Put that thing back where you came from, or so help me, so help me, so help me. And in a blink and you miss it moment, and we have a lot of those, frankly, it seems less dark on the Pelennor now. I love that. It kind of makes me think of the healing of Theoden when he gets out and he says, it's not so dark here.
Right. Yeah.
And it's the same kind of thing where we're going to see a little bit of hope, I think, as a result of that.
And it kind of, in a way, it a tangible representation of what Gandalf's general effect is, like we were just talking about a little bit ago. He kind of boosts the morale.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. So in the paragraph that we skipped there at the very end of this reading, we do see that Pippin is still watching the action as Gandalf meets up with the men on foot and presumably Faramir.
Yeah, the gate opens, men go out and bring Faramir and his remaining men into the city.
Mm-hmm. Now, Pippin, a man who knows the importance of Denethor, guesses that they will soon come to him at once, and so he heads over there.
Which is a really smart move by Pippin there. It's a good deduction, yeah.
Absolutely.
And joined, not surprisingly, by a lot of others who've watched this same drama unfold.
Oh, yeah. This is this is the equivalent of posting a video of a car accident on Facebook. I mean, everybody's going to look at it and they're going to stop. And the people that were actually there are going to talk about how I was there and I saw that. Yeah, it's just in anything like that. So I did notice something, though, Matt, that right as those soldiers were making their way into town, I thought I saw, a rather rotund barkeeper with a mail bag sneak his way in. What does Barlaman have in the bag for us tonight, Matt?
Laura H. writes in, so as you know, I still count myself as fairly new to Tolkien. I only read The Lord of the Rings for the first time 4 years ago.
Now, if this is who I think it is, Laura H., this question was actually sent in nearly 4 years ago, so her time in the fandom has at least doubled. Hi, Laura.
Laura goes on, I figured my question is apt since the Nazgul have been a staple feature in the podcast this season. Has there been speculation, or do we know, as to which races of men the Nazgul came from? From my limited reading, Lord of the Rings, Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, The Hobbit so far, I have puzzled that with the rings being made in the Second Age and the 9 given to 9 mortal men, then of course there would be an Easterling/Southron.
Mm-hmm.
But that there would have to be a Númenorian king or two in there as well, seeing as they jumped on the Morgoth Forever bandwagon at some point and had limitless ambition. What say you? Thanks, guys.
Oh, man. Well, first of all, I love the Morgoth Forever bandwagon.
Yes.
That's great. It is an apt question, even if Laura actually asked this originally during her read-through of Book 1 way back in Season 3. They were a staple feature then, and clearly the Nazgul are going to be a staple feature going forward here in Book 5 and 6. And while we may have been asked this question before, we've honestly never tackled it because it's going to require a lot of speculation. But I'm getting a little more comfortable with that, so let's go ahead. We're going to start with what we know, and then we'll speculate about what we don't know. In the Silmarillion, specifically in the Akallabeth, we read about Sauron's rise and his hatred of the Númenóreans, and that's where we read this. Yet Sauron was ever guileful, and it is said that among those whom he ensnared with the 9 rings, 3 were great lords of Númenórean race. Now, the thing is, we know, or almost certainly know, that they were not actually kings because we have a pretty thorough record of the kings and queens of Númenor in Unfinished Tales. I think we would have something written down if that were the case. Yeah. This text, though, does make it clear they were lords of Númenor. And frankly, this kind of fits with Sauron's style anyway, right? I mean, he tended to go after the men who were seeking power, not necessarily those who already had it. So
yeah.
I'm thinking really high-ranking men in the Númenórean colonies of Middle-earth, right? This is these guys were seduced to the dark side, if you want to mix your fandoms, long before he ever went to Númenor as the guest of Ar-Pharazôn.
Yeah, I think it's very likely some of these were some of those black Númenóreans even who came to ally themselves with Sauron. And as for what else we know, there's really only 2 things. One of the Nazgul has a name, Khamûl the Easterling.
Yeah.
We find out his name in Unfinished Tales in the section on the hunt for the ring. We also learn that he's referred to as the second chief, the Black Easterling, and has the epithet, the Shadow of the East, which is an awesome name, by the way.
Isn't it? I love it. I like actually, there's one coming up for the Witch King, or maybe it just passed. I don't remember. The Captain of Despair.
Oh,
I love that title. That is nasty.
These Nazgul have some great nicknames.
They do have some great names. Yeah.
He's also the chief of the Ringwraiths at Dol Guldur at that time in the Third Age, as the lieutenant of Sauron, while the Witch King was in Minas Morgul.
Right.
And that's the other thing we know, but so do you, and so does everyone who's seen the movie even once. The Witch King is the top boss Nazgul. Do we know about him?
Well, we know a lot about what he did in Angmar, and we know a few other things about him, but we don't know his identity. Now, I tend to think that he was one of those 3 Númenorian lords. There's nothing to confirm that. There's nothing that proves that the Witch King is himself one of those 3, but you sort of assume that those 3 ended up being near the top of the rankings, that they're the ones that are most powerful, aside from Camul, who clearly is the number 2.
That's always been my assumption too. It just feels like something that would fit well.
It does. Yeah, I think so. And now that would take care then of 4 of the 9, the Witch King and 2 other Númenorians, and then Camul the Easterling. So we've got 5 others, presumably other Easterlings and Southrons, but we can only speculate. I mean, we just don't have any specific information, but they could come from Far Harad. They could come from the area of Rune. They could come from anywhere in the south and the east for the most part.
If you're a gamer, they could be Helm Hammerhand and Isildur.
No, they cannot be Helm Hammerhand and Isildur's Shadow of Mordor or Shadow of War. No, terrible things. What we do know, though, about all of them is that those who used the 9 rings became mighty in their day, kings, sorcerers, and warriors of old. But I think it's key to note from that quote, they became those things. They weren't necessarily those things to start with. So the idea that they were kings to begin with doesn't come from that, right? It doesn't flow from that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the assumption that they're all kings, it kind of comes from...
Yeah, the way the movies portrayed it, it's sort of like the kings of men. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So I think, to your point earlier, I think you're right on that it's more natural that Sauron would take advantage of those seeking power.
Yeah.
And the word became here is very important.
Agreed. It's something that happened after they took the rings. And so they wouldn't have been the kings of Númenor. They might have been kings of other realms, of Rune, of Harad, of,
or like you said, lords,
lords.
Someone who's a little bit lower on the totem pole, but thinks I should be higher on the totem pole.
Exactly. And of course, some of them didn't even become kings at all. They became sorcerers or warriors.
Yes.
And that's, important to remember as well. So sadly, that is all we actually know.
Yeah. Now, do we have time for one more, Alan?
I think we do. John Paul writes in with a, rather logical question. Now, Fëanor is a jerk. You can just stop right there. We're done. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us this week on the Prancing Pony Podcast. Now, he goes on, though. But if he and the elves never left for Middle-earth, would the War of Wrath ever have happened? And Middle-earth would just be Morgoth's domain forever?
Oh, man.
What do you think?
This is a really interesting question.
It is. What would have happened if Fëanor and the rest of the Noldor never left for Middle-earth? Would the War of Wrath ever have happened? Would the Valar and the Vanyar eventually, for some reason, gone over, and why? Yeah.
So this is a really tricky one because we can't know for certain, like these hypotheticals, we're just throwing out guesses here.
That's exactly right.
I like to think that for some reason, what it would be, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point there would come a reason that, either the Valar would intervene, or even we see later in the Second Age there's instances, and even in the Third Age there's instances where Ilúvatar intervenes.
That's true.
Maybe if stuff hits the fan, so to speak, enough, then Ilúvatar steps in. Maybe
That's
I don't
true.
know.
That is true, and earlier the better, right? I mean,
right.
If we're talking about First Age, he was more likely to intervene than in the Third Age.
Yeah. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this, Alan.
Yeah, I mean, this is, like you said, sort of an unanswerable question, but I enjoy that because since the answer can't be known, I can't be wrong. Ultimately, though, I really think this boils down to a concept called that Sean and I have called for years, spibimi. Now, I should explain that for newer listeners and maybe even for you, Matt. I don't know.
I know what this is.
Okay.
Spibimi
is just an acronym for shall prove but mine instrument, and it is a reference to a passage in Einlindale when Melkor is doing his little one-note Johnny, Discord deal while Iluvatar is trying to make this great music, and he stops the music and he says these things to Melkor. At one point he says, "You shall prove but mine instrument to accomplish these things," right? He's basically telling him, even though you strive against me, even though you do all these things to go against my will, you're going to end up being the tool of my will. Mm-hmm. Through you, I am going to do these things that are going to be more amazing than you could have even imagined.
It's such an incredible line.
It really, really is. I mean, Einlindale is filled with incredible lines,
yes,
but that particular line, like, you end up seeing this concept throughout the entirety of the Legendarium. So here's the thing. If Iluvatar wanted Morgoth to get beaten and thrown through the doors of night, then that's going to take place through one set of circumstances or another. And frankly, I happen to think that the war that the Valar would eventually launch to take down Morgoth, it probably wouldn't be called the War of Wrath. It might be called something else. That would have happened even if the Noldor, led by the prideful, blasphemous, and murderous Fëanor, I'm never going to stop beating that piñata, had never left Valinor. And so in this scenario, keep this in mind, Fëanor still made the Silmarils, Ungoliant still slew the trees, and Morgoth still stole the Silmarils. In that situation, yeah, absolutely, I think the War of Wrath still happens. I actually think it would have happened sooner than it did in the First Age. I'm going to tell you why. The reason that it took Eärendil to get the Valar to come and clean things up in Middle-earth is because the Valar had fenced Valinor against the Noldoran exiles. So I'll even read that passage because, well, heck, anytime I can read from the Silmarillion, I always will. And in that time also, which songs call Nurtale Valinoreva, the hiding of Valinor, the enchanted isles were set, and all the seas about them were filled with shadows and bewilderment. And these isles were strung as a net in the shadowy seas from the north to the south, before Tol Eressëa, the lonely isle, is reached by one sailing west. Hardly might any vessel pass between them, for in the dangerous sounds the waves sighed forever upon dark rocks shrouded in mist. And in the twilight a great weariness came upon mariners and a loathing of the sea. But all that ever set foot upon the islands were there entrapped, and slept until the change of the world. Thus it was that, as Mandos foretold to them in Ahriman, the blessed realm was shut against the Noldor, and of the many messengers that in after days sailed into the west, none came ever to Valinor, save one only, the mightiest mariner of song. And I dare say, had they not had to do that, right? Had the Valar not have to fence Valinor against the Noldor, I think the request for help, which would have come from the Teleri and from men, and not the Noldor, would have made it through sooner. So, yeah.
The real question here is, what would the war be called at that point?
Exactly. What's the name of this war?
It's not the War of the Wrath, so it's like the war where the Valar actually do stuff.
The war where the Valar actually do stuff.
Like,
war to save the men, because this, just as they had rescued the elves
the war
earlier,
of the second children, the second children.
There you go. Yeah. Just another reason for the elves to hate men.
Yeah.
The aftercomers, the sickly, the reason for the second war. Exactly.
Oh, I like this. That's a really great point. The divide that comes between the Valar and the Noldor, and you see, they just, to not all of them, mind you. Ulmo is very much still, active in Middle Earth. But yeah, there's this divide, and I think you're right. I think, with Morgoth just continuing to spread his influence and darkness, I think they would take notice of that. And, for as excited and as the Valar are for the awakening of the first children, I would like to think they would have some excitement about the second children.
I don't know. You have more than one kid. Were you as excited for the birth of your second kid as you were for the birth of your first?
Well,
don't answer that.
I was going to say, I do know that that my baby book is completely full from my childhood, but my other siblings,
Yeah,
the
second sibling and the third sibling, not so
so
much.
maybe not. And they're actually like, if you throw the dwarves in there, they're like, the dwarves become the middle child, and
they really are, aren't
the
they?
men become the third born then at that point.
Ooh,
but
yikes.
Man, they really go, yeah.
They forget they had the men sometimes.
Right, yeah, they just, yeah. So maybe
those elves and dwarves, and then one of them go, don't forget the men.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man. Great stuff. Well, folks, that does wrap it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. But be sure to join us again next week when Denethor submits his application for Father of the Year.
Folks, Alan and I want to thank the members of Team PPP. Editor Jordan Rennells, Barlaman, Becca Davis, along with our team of research assistants. Social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, graphic artist Megan Collins, and website guru Phil Dean.
Now, speaking of the website, please be sure to give us a visit there at theprancingponypodcast.com. We've got show notes, hilarious outtakes, Prancing Pony ponderings, and our online storefront where you can get all sorts of PPP merch.
You'll also want to visit our library page. The Prancing Pony Podcast is first and foremost a podcast about the books. So if you're interested in a book we've mentioned on the show, you'll find a link for it in our library. The PPP gets a small amount of compensation when you make your purchase, and we thank you for that.
Now, we also want to thank our patrons at the Kierdan's contribution tier. I'll start with DeMay in Alaska, James in Virginia, Tamsin in Minnesota, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Jerry in Texas, B in California, Joseph in Texas, Kathy from North Carolina, Lori from Washington, Carlos in California, Brian in the UK, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, and Erwin from the Netherlands.
There's also Dylan in Australia, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, Karen in the UK, Zaksu in Illinois, Brian in Texas, Sarah in New Jersey, June in Ireland, Joshua in Massachusetts, Lucy in Texas, Connor in North Carolina, Keith in Alabama, Carson in Oklahoma, Vivian in California, and James in Massachusetts. Thank you all so very much for your support.
Indeed. Thank you.
Make sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe now through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast app.
Now, one last thing as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and most of all, your cheers for Gandalf the White Rider. Give me a G. Give me an A. Whatever. Give those to Barlaman at theprancingponypodcast.com. And if you want your voice literally heard, well, just send us audio of your question. Visit podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us.
Please be sure to still email the question to Barlaman. Even though Barlaman's been a lot more reliable lately, there's still a lot of mail to sort through. We'll try to get to you just as soon as we're able.
As always, though, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
This is the end. We are going. We are leaving now. Goodbye.